My brother's wedding planner called. Your family canceled your invitation, but asked to keep the $65,000 deposit you paid. I said, cancel the entire wedding. The silence stretched 30 seconds before Vanessa stammered. I'm sorry, what? You heard me. Cancel everything. Venue, flowers, band, photographer, all of it. But the wedding is in 3 days. There are 200 guests. Not my problem anymore. I hung up and poured wine. My phone immediately started buzzing. First my brother Finn, then Dad, then Mom. I let them all go to voicemail. The mess started when I brought Camden to last month's family barbecue. I'd been dating him 8 months, and it was time my family met the man I was planning to marry. Camden is everything I'd ever wanted. Kind, successful, funny, and completely devoted to me. He's also black. The introductions went fine. Camden charmed my aunts with stories about his veterinary practice and bonded with my cousin over baseball. I thought we'd cleared the biggest hurdle. Then Uncle Garrett cornered me by the kitchen. Really, Presley? You couldn't find someone more suitable? What's that supposed to mean? His eyes darted toward Camden, who was helping my nephew catch fireflies. You know what it means. Think about the children. Think about what people will say. I should have left then. Instead, I tried to reason with him, explain that Camden was an amazing man who treated me like a queen. Uncle Garrett just shook his head like I was a child playing with fire. The real blow came 2 weeks later when Finn called. I need to ask you something, and it's going to be awkward. My stomach dropped. What? Would you consider coming to the wedding alone? Miranda's family is traditional. They're threatening to boycott if Camden comes. Her dad already put down his own deposit for the reception, and he's saying he'll pull funding if there are complications. I couldn't breathe. Complications? You know what I mean. Please, Presley. It's one day. You can bring him to the next family thing. That's when I realized my brother, who I'd helped through college, who I'd bailed out of 3 financial disasters, who I'd paid for an entire wedding because Miranda wanted her dream day, was asking me to hide the man I loved. Who else feels this way? I asked quietly. The pause told me everything. My whole family had discussed this behind my back. They'd weighed my happiness against their comfort and decided I was expendable. It's just easier this way, Finn said weakly. I started laughing, not because anything was funny, but because the alternative was screaming. You want to know what's easy, Finn? Canceling vendor contracts when you're the one who signed them. That's how I ended up with the nuclear option. When I'd offered to pay for everything, Finn insisted all contracts go through me for tax purposes. Every vendor, every deposit, every signature, all in my name. My phone rang again. This time it was Miranda. Presley, please. We can work this out. Camden can come. I'll talk to my parents. Too late, but I love your brother. We've been planning this for 2 years. Then you should have thought about that before you decided I wasn't family enough to bring my boyfriend. I could hear her crying. Part of me felt bad. Most of me didn't. The doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Camden holding takeout bags, completely unaware that his existence had just imploded a wedding. Hey, gorgeous. How was your day? I kissed him and decided not to tell him yet. He'd blame himself, and none of this was his fault. We were halfway through dinner when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Meet me at Riverside Park tomorrow at noon. Come alone. Dad. Something in that message made my blood turn cold. Dad never texted. And he definitely never used terms like, come alone. I stared at the screen, and for the first time since canceling the wedding, I wondered if I'd underestimated exactly how far my family was willing to go. Camden noticed my expression. Everything okay? I forced a smile and slipped the phone into my pocket. Perfect. But as I looked at the man I loved, laughing at something on TV, completely trusting that the world was safe, I realized tomorrow might change everything. And not in a good way. That night I barely slept. Every scenario I imagined for tomorrow's meeting ended badly. Dad demanding I reinstate the wedding, threats about my inheritance. Or worse, something involving Camden's safety. By morning, I'd made up my mind. If Dad wanted to play games, I'd come prepared. I downloaded a call recording app and tested it twice. Then I called my best friend Zoe, who knew about everything that had happened. I need you to know where I'll be today, I said. And if something happens to me, make sure Camden knows it wasn't his fault. Jesus, Presley, you're scaring me. Good. I'm scared too. I gave her all the details. The park, the time, Dad's message. She promised to call the police if I didn't check in by 2 p.m. Camden had left early for surgery on a horse with colic, kissing me goodbye while I pretended to sleep. I felt guilty lying to him, but some instinct told me this meeting needed to stay between my family and me. At 11:45, I drove to Riverside Park. The place was mostly empty, just a few joggers and a woman walking her dog. I chose a bench near the playground where I'd have clear sightlines in all directions. Dad arrived exactly at noon wearing his intimidation uniform, the expensive suit he saved for business deals and court appearances. Behind him walked Uncle Garrett and my cousin Bryce, who'd played college football before steroids destroyed his knees and common sense. My stomach dropped. This wasn't a family conversation. This was an intervention with muscle. Hello, sweetheart, Dad said, sitting beside me while the other two flanked us. Where's Mom? I asked. At home, crying over what you've done to your brother. What I've done? I laughed bitterly. I'm not the one who decided my boyfriend wasn't good enough for their precious wedding. Dad's jaw tightened. This isn't about him personally. It's about preserving our family's reputation. The Hendersons have been in this community for 4 generations. We have standing responsibilities. To who? To everyone who depends on us. Our employees, our charities, our church. When people see our family, they see tradition and stability. Your choices reflect on all of us. I pressed record on my phone app. My choices? You mean loving someone? Uncle Garrett stepped closer. Don't be naive, Presley. This is about more than love. It's about the future of our legacy. What legacy is that exactly? Being racist? Nobody's racist. Bryce interjected. We just believe in natural order. Like attracts like. I stared at my cousin, the same man who'd been arrested twice for bar fights and once for domestic violence, lecturing me about order. Here's what's going to happen, Dad said, his voice taking on the tone he used with difficult clients. You're going to call the vendors back. You're going to apologize for the misunderstanding. And you're going to make this right. And if I don't? Dad pulled out his phone and showed me a series of photos. My car in Camden's driveway. Camden leaving his clinic. Camden at the grocery store. We know where he lives, where he works, where he shops. It would be unfortunate if someone called animal control about unsafe practices at his clinic, or if his landlord received anonymous complaints about noise violations, or if potential clients heard rumors about his character. My blood turned to ice. You're threatening him. We're protecting our family, Uncle Garrett said. Sometimes that requires difficult decisions. I looked at these three men, my father, my uncle, my cousin, and realized I was seeing them clearly for the first time. They weren't just racist. They were bullies who'd hidden their true nature behind money and social standing. You have until tomorrow morning, Dad continued. Finn's wedding will proceed as planned. You'll attend alone and smile for the cameras. Camden will understand that sometimes relationships don't work out. And if he doesn't understand, Dad's smile was cold. Then he'll learn. They stood to leave, but I stayed seated. I need to ask you something, I said. Dad paused. What? How long have you been planning this? The family barbecue, Finn's request, all of it. This feels too coordinated to be spontaneous. For just a moment, Dad's mask slipped. I saw something that looked almost like pride. Your brother called us the night after he met Camden, said you seemed serious about him. We had to consider our options. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Finn hadn't been pressured by Miranda's family. He'd orchestrated this from the beginning. So the whole thing, Miranda's traditional parents, the boycott threats. Miranda's parents are progressive Democrats who donated to Obama twice, Uncle Garrett said with a smirk. But they're good people. They understand the importance of family unity. I sat there processing the elaborate con they'd pulled, the fake crisis, the emotional manipulation, the carefully orchestrated meeting today. They'd played me like a chess piece. Clever, I said finally. Really clever. Dad looked pleased. We prefer to think of it as thorough. There's just one problem with your plan. What's that? I held up my phone, showing the recording app that had been running for the entire conversation. I have everything you just said. The threats against Camden, the admission that you fabricated Miranda's family's objections, Uncle Garrett's comment about natural order, all of it. The color drained from Dad's face. Delete that. No. Bryce stepped forward, but I was already backing toward my car. You know what's funny? I called out. You're so worried about protecting the family reputation, but you just handed me everything I need to destroy it. I drove straight home, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the steering wheel. Camden's truck was in the driveway. Surgery must have finished early. I found him in the kitchen, still in his scrubs, heating up leftover Chinese food. Hey, beautiful. How was your day? I broke down sobbing. The relief of seeing him safe, the anger at my family's betrayal, the fear of what they might still do, it all hit me at once. Camden dropped everything and pulled me into his arms. What happened? Tell me. So I did. I told him about the family barbecue, Finn's phone call, the wedding cancellation, and today's meeting. I played him the recording. I watched his face change as he realized exactly what my family was capable of. I'm so sorry, he said quietly. I should have known this would happen. This isn't your fault, isn't it? If I wasn't in your life, stop. I grabbed his face in my hands. If you weren't in my life, I'd still be making excuses for their behavior. You didn't break my family, Camden. You just showed me it was already broken. He kissed me then, gentle and fierce at the same time. What do we do now? He asked. I pulled out my laptop. We fight back. For the next 3 hours, I crafted the most comprehensive expose of my family's racism that I could manage. I included the audio recording, screenshots of Dad's threatening photos, and a detailed timeline of everything that had happened. I researched the Henderson family's public commitments, the diversity initiatives at Dad's law firm, Uncle Garrett's position on the United Way board, our family's donations to various civil rights organizations. The hypocrisy was staggering. Then I started making a list of recipients, local news outlets, social media influencers, civil rights organizations, and every client and business partner I could think of. Are you sure about this? Camden asked. Once you send this, there's no going back. There's already no going back. They made sure of that when they threatened you. But before I could hit send, my phone rang. It was Mom. Please don't answer, Camden said. I looked at the caller ID. After everything that had happened, part of me still hoped she might be different. That maybe she'd been kept in the dark about Dad's plan. Hello, Mom. Presley, honey, we need to talk. About what? Dad's threats against Camden? Or maybe Finn's little performance about Miranda's family? Silence. You knew? I said. You knew the whole time. I knew your father was concerned. Concerned? He threatened to destroy Camden's business and reputation. He had people following him and taking pictures. That's not concern, Mom. That's stalking. You have to understand, sweetheart. We're trying to protect you. From what? From making a mistake you'll regret. Mixed relationships are difficult. The children face challenges. Stop talking. What? Just stop talking. I don't want to hear another word. I hung up and stared at my laptop screen. The expose was finished, polished, and ready to send. Last chance to change your mind, Camden said softly. I thought about the family I'd grown up with. Sunday dinners and birthday parties, Christmas mornings and graduation celebrations, 30 years of memories that would be poisoned forever once I pressed send. Then I thought about the recording on my phone, the casual way they'd discussed destroying the man I loved, the elaborate deception they'd constructed, the threats veiled as protection. I hit send. The response was immediate. My phone started buzzing with notifications as the story spread across social media. Local news outlets picked it up within hours. By evening, Bonner Henderson family was trending on Twitter. The first real consequence came the next morning. Dad called, his voice shaking with rage. Do you have any idea what you've done? Expose the truth? 3 clients fired us overnight. The Bar Association is launching an investigation. Your uncle was asked to resign from every board he's on. Sounds like consequences for your actions. We're family, Presley. Family doesn't destroy family. You stopped being family the moment you threatened Camden. Dad's voice turned pleading. This will ruin us. Everything we've built. Should have thought of that before you decided to play Mafia Don. I hung up and blocked his number. The next call came from Finn. This one I answered because I had things to say. You lying piece of shit, I said before he could speak. Presley, I can explain. Explain what? How you set me up from day one? How you called Dad the night you met Camden and started planning this whole charade? I was trying to protect you from yourself. You always make impulsive decisions when it comes to relationships. Impulsive? I've been with Camden for 8 months. I've been planning to marry him. Exactly. You barely know him. I know him better than I ever knew you, apparently. Finn's voice cracked. Miranda left me. She saw the news story and said she couldn't marry into a family like ours. 5 years together, Presley. 5 years down the drain because you couldn't just go along with the plan for one day. Miranda left you because she discovered who you really are, just like I did. I was protecting our family. No, you were protecting your racist worldview. There's a difference. I hung up on him too. Camden had taken the week off work after reporters started showing up at his clinic. We spent those days holed up in my apartment, watching my family's world crumble in real time. The Henderson law firm lost half their clients within a week. Uncle Garrett was forced to resign from his position at the bank after their diversity committee demanded his removal. Cousin Bryce was fired from his sales job when his employer decided they couldn't afford the association. But the most satisfying consequence came from an unexpected source. Vanessa, the wedding planner, called me 5 days after I'd canceled everything. I wanted to thank you, she said. For what? Destroying your biggest event of the year? For showing me what kind of people they really are. After you canceled, your father called and offered me double my fee to somehow salvage the wedding. When I said it was impossible, he started screaming about how it was all your fault for dating that black man. My stomach turned. I'm sorry you had to hear that. Don't be. I recorded the whole conversation. I've been in this business for 15 years, and I've seen plenty of entitled families, but I've never seen anything that disgusting. I sent the recording to my professional association. They're circulating it as an example of the kind of clients we should refuse to work with. Good for you. There's more. I also sent it to my friend who works at Channel 7. They're running a follow-up story tonight about how the family has continued to blame you instead of taking responsibility for their actions. That evening, Camden and I watched the news together. There was Dad, ambushed by reporters outside his office, claiming he'd been taken out of context. Uncle Garrett insisting he wasn't racist, just traditional. And Finn, looking haggard and defensive, blaming me for destroying his life. They'd learned nothing. 3 weeks later, Camden and I were having dinner when someone knocked on my door. Through the peephole, I saw a woman I didn't recognize holding a bouquet of flowers. Are you Presley Henderson? She asked when I opened the door. Yes. My name is Claudia Martinez. I wanted to thank you. She explained that she'd been hired as a paralegal at Dad's firm 6 months earlier. She was one of only 3 Hispanic employees in a company of 50 people. She'd noticed the subtle discrimination but had been afraid to speak up because she needed the job. After your story came out, 8 of us filed a joint complaint with the EEOC, she said. We finally felt safe to tell the truth about what it's like to work there. I invited her in for coffee. As we talked, I learned about the toxic culture Dad had created, the racist jokes in partner meetings, the way minority employees were passed over for promotions, the subtle intimidation tactics used to keep people quiet. Your story gave us courage, Claudia said. Sometimes it takes someone from the inside to show others it's okay to fight back. After she left, I sat on my couch thinking about unintended consequences. I'd set out to expose my family's treatment of Camden and me. I hadn't expected to inspire others to speak up about their own experiences. 2 months later, the Henderson law firm closed permanently. Dad filed for bankruptcy a week later. Uncle Garrett was facing criminal charges for embezzlement that came to light during the investigation, and Finn had moved to another state trying to escape the scandal. Mom was the only one who eventually reached out to apologize. She came to my apartment on a rainy Thursday evening, looking older and more fragile than I'd ever seen her. I know you probably don't want to see me, she said. Come in, Mom. We sat in my living room, the same space where I'd written the exposé that destroyed her world. I was wrong, she said simply. About Camden, about the wedding, about all of it. I let your father convince me that protecting the family meant protecting their version of respectability. Why didn't you stand up for me? Mom started crying. Because I was a coward. I've been a coward for 35 years. Your father made all the decisions, and I just went along with them because it was easier than fighting, even when you knew they were wrong. Especially then. We sat in silence for a long time. I'd like to meet him, she said finally. Camden, if he'll let me. That's up to him. When Camden got home that evening, I told him about Mom's visit. He listened without judgment, the way he always did. What do you think? I asked. I think forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, not other people. If having a relationship with your mother would make you happy, then I'd like to meet her. And if it doesn't work out, then at least you'll know you tried. The next week, the 3 of us had dinner at a quiet restaurant downtown. Mom was nervous, stumbling over her words and clearly out of her element. But she tried. She asked Camden about his work, his family, his plans for the future. She listened to his answers without judgment. When Camden excused himself to take a phone call, Mom turned to me. He's wonderful, she said. I can see why you love him. Do you mean that? I mean everything I should have said months ago. 3 months later, Camden proposed. We had a small ceremony at his family's farm in North Carolina, surrounded by people who loved us for exactly who we were. Mom came to the wedding. She walked me down the aisle because Dad was in jail awaiting trial for tax evasion. She cried during our vows and hugged Camden like he was the son she'd always wanted. During the reception, she pulled me aside. I have something for you, she said, handing me a small wrapped box. Inside was her grandmother's engagement ring, a simple gold band with a small diamond. I was saving this for your wedding day, she said. I know you already have a ring, but I wanted you to have something that represents the family you deserve, not the one you escaped from. I hugged her tightly. Thank you for choosing love over fear. Thank you for showing me how. 6 months after the wedding, Camden and I bought a house 3 streets away from his veterinary clinic. We hosted Sunday dinners for his family and mine, which now included Mom and a handful of cousins who'd reached out to apologize and rebuild relationships. Dad wrote me letters from prison. I threw them away unopened. Finn sent a wedding card with no return address. Inside was a note. I'm sorry. I hope someday you can forgive me. I kept it in a drawer, unsure how I felt about it. Uncle Garrett died of a heart attack during his embezzlement trial. I felt sad for his children, but nothing for him. 2 years later, I was promoted to senior marketing director at my company. Camden opened a second clinic. We talked about starting a family. One evening, as we sat on our back porch watching the sunset, Camden asked me if I ever regretted what I'd done. Destroying the family business? Getting Dad arrested? Ruining Finn's wedding? All of it. I thought about the question seriously. My family name was synonymous with scandal in our hometown. Former friends crossed the street when they saw me. I'd lost my inheritance and any claim to the social standing I'd grown up with. No, I said finally. I don't regret any of it. Even though it cost you everything? I looked at my husband, at our home, at the life we'd built together. I thought about Claudia and the other employees who'd found the courage to speak up. About Mom learning to choose love over fear. About the young couples who'd reached out to say our story had inspired them to stand up to their own family's prejudices. It didn't cost me everything, I said. It cost me everything that was built on lies. But it gave me everything that was built on truth. Camden squeezed my hand. I love you, Mrs. Richardson. I love you too. As darkness fell, I could see lights coming on in houses throughout the neighborhood. Families gathering for dinner, children playing in yards, couples sharing quiet moments together. This was the legacy I wanted. Not the Henderson family's reputation for tradition and respectability, but something real, something honest, something worth fighting for. 3 years later, our daughter Zara was born. She has Camden's eyes and my stubborn streak. When people ask about her mixed heritage, I tell them she's beautiful, brilliant, and loved beyond measure. Mom is her favorite babysitter. She reads to her every Tuesday while Camden and I go to date nights. Sometimes I catch her whispering to Zara about standing up for herself and choosing love over fear. Last month, Finn reached out through Mom. He's remarried, living in Oregon, working as a teacher. He said he's been in therapy for 2 years, trying to understand how he became the person he was. He asked if we could talk. I'm not ready yet. Maybe someday. But I keep his letters in the same drawer as his wedding card, because forgiveness isn't something you achieve once and never think about again. It's something you choose over and over, until choosing it becomes easier than choosing anger. Yesterday, Camden and I took Zara to the park where Dad once threatened to destroy our lives. She played on the same swings where I'd sat terrified, wondering if I'd underestimated my family's capacity for cruelty. As I watched her laugh and explore and trust that the world was safe, I realized something important. The best revenge against people who tried to limit your life is living that life fully. The Henderson family legacy died with Dad's law firm and Uncle Garrett's disgrace. But the Richardson family legacy is just beginning, and it's built on love. 15 years later, Zara is a sophomore in high school, captain of the debate team, and determined to become a civil rights lawyer. She knows the full story of how Camden and I met, how my family reacted, and what it cost us to choose love over convenience. Last week, she came home from school upset. A boy in my chemistry class said his parents told him not to be friends with me because I'm mixed, she said. My protective instincts flared. What did you tell him? I told him his parents sound like Grandpa's family and that he should probably learn to think for himself. Camden and I exchanged glances across the dinner table. How did he respond? Camden asked. He asked if I wanted to study together for our test next week. I smiled. And? I said yes, because the best way to fight ignorance is with education. That night, as I tucked her into bed, Zara asked me something that caught me off guard. Mom, do you think Uncle Finn is a good person now? I'd been wondering the same thing. He'd been writing annually for the past 5 years. Letters that showed genuine remorse and real growth. Mom had started responding to them. She said he'd become a different person, someone who taught his students about tolerance and spent his weekends volunteering with refugee families. I think people can change, I said carefully, but changing doesn't erase what they did before. Would you ever want to see him again? I thought about it. Maybe, when I'm ready. When will you be ready? I don't know, sweetheart. Healing takes as long as it takes. She nodded thoughtfully. Could I meet him someday? Even if you're not ready? The question surprised me. Why would you want to? Because he's part of our family story, and I want to understand all the parts of where I come from. 6 months later, Zara asked again. This time, she'd been corresponding with Finn through Mom, letters about school and books and her dreams for the future. He doesn't sound like the person you've described, she said. People contain multitudes, I replied. Someone can be genuinely sorry for terrible things they did, and still be responsible for the harm they caused. But shouldn't forgiveness be about healing, not punishment? My wise daughter had a point. That summer, we arranged a meeting. Camden, Zara, Mom, and me would drive to Portland to meet Finn and his new family for lunch. The night before we left, I was restless. Camden found me on the back porch at 2 a.m., staring at the stars. Second thoughts? He asked. Third and fourth thoughts. He sat beside me. What's the worst that could happen? He could be exactly the same person he always was, just better at hiding it. And what's the best that could happen? He could be genuinely different. We could have a conversation that helps us both heal. Which outcome scares you more? I thought about it. The second one. Because forgiveness feels like letting him off the hook? Because forgiveness feels like admitting I was wrong to cut him off completely. Camden was quiet for a moment. You weren't wrong. You protected yourself and me from people who wanted to hurt us. But protecting yourself then doesn't mean you can't choose connection now. The next day, we drove 4 hours to Portland. Finn had chosen a family restaurant in a quiet neighborhood, somewhere neutral and non-threatening. I saw him through the window before we went inside. He looked older, obviously, but different in ways that went beyond aging. The arrogance was gone. The entitled posture had been replaced by something that looked like humility. When we walked in, he stood immediately. For a moment, we just looked at each other across 15 years of hurt and silence. Presley, he said simply. Finn, he turned to Camden. I owe you an apology I can never adequately make. Camden studied him for a long moment. Thank you for saying that. Then Finn knelt down to Zara's level. You must be Zara. Your grandmother talks about you constantly. Are you really my uncle? She asked with characteristic directness. I'm your mother's brother. Whether that makes me your uncle is up to your family to decide. We sat down together. Awkward at first, then gradually more natural. Finn introduced us to his wife Keiko and their 2 young children. He talked about his teaching, his therapy, his gradual understanding of how racism had poisoned his thinking. I know this doesn't excuse anything, he said during a quiet moment when the kids were playing nearby. But I want you to know that destroying your wedding was the best thing that ever happened to me. How so? I asked. Because it forced me to confront who I really was. Without that, I would have married Miranda under false pretenses and spent my life perpetuating the same toxic pattern. Instead, I lost everything, moved across the country, and had to rebuild myself from scratch. He paused, watching his children play with Zara. These kids are growing up with Japanese heritage from their mother and whatever heritage I have from our family. They're learning that love comes in many forms, and that difference makes the world beautiful. I would never have been capable of that kind of parenting 15 years ago. Camden leaned forward. What changed? Consequences, Finn said simply. Real consequences for my actions. For the first time in my life, I couldn't charm my way out of what I'd done or blame someone else for my problems. I had to face the truth about myself. By the end of lunch, Zara was showing Finn and Keiko pictures from her phone. Camden was discussing veterinary medicine with them. Mom was crying happy tears. As we prepared to leave, Finn asked if he could speak to me privately. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. I don't deserve it, and I know that. But I want you to know that not a day goes by that I don't think about what I put you through. Your courage in standing up to all of us. It saved my life. How do you figure? Because it showed me what integrity looks like. You chose truth over comfort, love over safety, principle over convenience. You became the person I should have been. I looked at my brother, the man who had once betrayed me so completely I thought I'd never recover, and felt something shift inside me. I'm not ready to be close, I said, but I'm willing to be in touch. He nodded. That's more than I hoped for. On the drive home, Zara peppered us with questions about family dynamics and forgiveness and the difference between accountability and punishment. Do you think people really change? She asked. Some do, I said. But change has to be proven over time through actions, not just words. How long does it take to prove? As long as it takes. That night, Camden and I talked about the visit. How do you feel? He asked. Confused, hopeful, scared, grateful. For what? For you, for Zara, for the life we built that was strong enough to survive this meeting without being threatened by it. 6 months later, Finn and Keiko visited us. Zara gave them a tour of the town, including the park where my father had once made his threats. She pointed out where everything had happened, narrating our family's story with the matter-of-fact tone of someone who'd grown up knowing that love sometimes requires courage. This is where Mom decided to fight back, she said, pointing to the bench. And this is where she realized she was stronger than the people trying to control her. Finn sat on that bench for a long time, looking around the park where his daughter played with his niece and nephew. It's beautiful here, he said finally. It is now, I replied. 2 years later, when Zara graduated high school as valedictorian, Finn and his family came to the ceremony. In her speech, she talked about the importance of choosing love over fear, truth over comfort, and growth over comfort zones. After the ceremony, a reporter from the local paper asked if he could interview our family about overcoming racism and building bridges. What would you say to other families dealing with similar conflicts? He asked. I looked at Camden, at Zara, at Mom, at Finn and his family, at the complicated, imperfect, beautiful collection of people who had become my chosen family. I'd say that love isn't always easy, but it's always worth fighting for, I said. And sometimes the fight requires walking away from everything you thought was family to find the people who actually deserve that title. And to those who have made mistakes, Finn answered this one. Own them, all of them. Don't make excuses or blame circumstances. Face the truth about yourself, do the work to change, and understand that forgiveness is a gift, not an entitlement. Any final thoughts? Zara stepped forward. The most important thing I've learned from my family is that heritage isn't just about where you come from, it's about what you choose to pass forward. And I choose to pass forward love. That evening, we celebrated at our house. 3 generations, multiple ethnicities, various perspectives, united by the choice to keep choosing each other despite our complicated history. As I watched Finn help Camden with the dishes, while Zara and her cousins played in the yard and Mom and Keiko shared stories about raising children, I realized something important. The Henderson family had been built on image and control and fear of what other people might think. The Richardson family, the one Camden and I had created, the one that now included Mom and Finn and his children and everyone we'd chosen to love, was built on truth and growth and the willingness to keep working towards something better. Sometimes the best thing you can do for a family is destroy it completely, so something healthier can grow in its place. 20 years after I canceled Finn's wedding, I was asked to speak at a conference about overcoming family racism. The audience was full of people who'd been disowned for loving across racial lines, who'd chosen truth over comfort, who'd paid the price for refusing to accept unacceptable behavior. The question I get asked most often, I said, is whether I regret destroying my family relationships to protect my relationship with my husband. I paused, looking out at faces that reflected my own journey. But that question misses the point. I didn't destroy my family relationships. I exposed them. The relationships that couldn't survive the truth weren't relationships worth preserving. And the ones that could survive, like my relationship with my mother, and eventually with my brother, became stronger because they were finally built on honesty instead of performance. After my speech, a young woman approached me. She was holding hands with a woman of a different race, both of them wearing engagement rings. "My family is threatening to boycott our wedding," she said. "My father says he'll disown me if I don't come to my senses." What does coming to your senses mean to him? Marrying someone more appropriate. I looked at these two young women, probably the same age I'd been when I brought Camden to that first family barbecue. "Here's what I wish someone had told me," I said. "The people who love you for who you really are will fight for you. The people who love you for who they want you to be will try to change you. Choose the ones who fight for you. But what if we lose everything? Then you'll discover what everything really means." 6 months later, I received a wedding invitation. The young woman had chosen love over fear. Her family had eventually chosen love over prejudice. Not all of them, but enough. Because sometimes that's how change happens. Not all at once, not perfectly, but person by person, choice by choice, generation by generation. Zara is in college now, studying law at Howard University, following her dream of becoming a civil rights attorney. She calls every Sunday to tell us about her classes, her friends, her plans to change the world. Last week, she called with news. "I'm dating someone," she said. "Tell me about them," I replied. "Their name is River. They're studying environmental law. They're funny and kind, and they make me want to be a better person. They sound wonderful. They're also non-binary and white and come from a conservative family in rural Alabama." I smiled, remembering my own phone call to Mom 20 years earlier. "Are you happy?" I asked. "Incredibly. Then I'm happy too. Even though it might be complicated, the best things usually are." That night, I told Camden about Zara's news. "Think we're going to have to battle another family of bigots?" he asked. "Maybe, but we'll handle it." "How can you be so sure?" "Because we know how this story ends. Love wins. It doesn't always win easily, and it doesn't always win quickly, but it always wins eventually. Even when it costs everything." I looked around our home, at the pictures of our chosen family, at the evidence of lives built on truth instead of convenience, at the legacy we'd created by refusing to accept the unacceptable, especially then, because sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable hatred. Sometimes the most family thing you can do is choose to build a better version of family. And sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is trust that love is stronger than fear, even when, especially when, fear has the power and money and tradition on its side. The last thing I did before finishing this story was call Mom. She's 75 now, spending her retirement teaching literacy to immigrant children and spoiling her grandchildren and great-grandchildren. "I wanted to thank you," I told her. "For what?" "For showing me that it's never too late to choose love over fear." "Oh, sweetheart," she said, and I could hear her smiling through the tears. "You showed me that. You showed all of us." 22 years later, that's still the lesson I'm most proud to have learned. Love is always worth fighting for, even when the fight costs you everything you thought you wanted. Because what you discover on the other side is everything you actually needed.